Okay, so this presentation is about sociological theories of the family, and it is basically about the function of the family. So sociological theory is primarily concerned with what the family does, and therefore we will explain sociological views on the functions of the family, use examples to back up what we are saying, and allow ourselves to critically assess the views of the family. This will be useful for people who are doing A-level sociology or any other sociology course where the family comes up, primarily aimed at level 3. So there are a few theories of the family, well, loads of theories, but the ones that we're going to cover are mainly functionalism, Marxism, feminism, and a little bit of postmodernism at the end. There are others, and obviously you can use them if you wish. So functionalism is a consensus perspective. Basically, what that means is that in our society, we agree on society's norms and values, and we all kind of believe the same things. They believe that society is made up of parts, just like the human body is. So that's known as the organic analogy. You know, the human body has heart and a lung and lungs and eyes and nose, and they all work together just as every other thing in society works together. So the family with the educational system and the criminal justice system, etc. Every part of society has a function. That's why it's called functionalism, and that's what helps society continue to run in a smooth way. So in terms of the functions of the family, the question is, what do you think the family does? What's the role of the family? It could be things like to prepare people for work, to teach them society's norms and values, to produce children. But, and here's some ideas, but it tends to boil down to one of 4 different functions, depending on which theory you come from. And each of those 4 functions, you can use them for all of the theories. So, for example, one of the functions is reproduction. Okay, if you are a Marxist, you believe that children are reproduced in order to be good workers. If you are a functionalist, you believe that children are produced in order to add members to society. So, you know, you'll have the same function, but you'll have a different spin on it depending on what theory you come from. So the first functionalist we can talk about is called G.P. Murdoch. And he was the guy, or one of the guys, that came up with the idea of the 4 functions thing. And as I said, you can use that for any theory. So it's a good thing to remember if you are, for example, an A-level student and you have those 4 functions, and then you can put a spin on it depending on whether you're talking about Marxism, functionalism, feminism, whatever. But Murdoch studied 250 societies, and he found that the nuclear family was a universal institution because it is the best and most logical method for performing the 4 functions that the family performs, which he says are these. So, reproductive, creating new members of our society. Educational function, teaching norms and values. Economic function, in this case pooling resources to provide for each other. And the sexual function, provide a stable sexual relationship for adults. So, functionalism is kind of a conservative perspective, and it assumes that the nuclear family is the best version of the family, and it assumes that it is the most logical way of performing these 4 functions. It also assumes that it's the most common. In 1949 it probably was, maybe less so now, but even now you could argue that the nuclear family is the most common family form, depending on how you define nuclear family. So yeah, that's Murdoch, and as I said, with the other theories, think about how you could apply those 4 functions to this theory. So for example, the sexual function. What is the sexual function of the family according to a feminist? Well, it's to control the sexuality of women in order that men can ensure that women can perform them sexual favors and things like that, you know. So it's the same function, but it's a slightly different spin on it depending on what theory you come from. Yeah, the family is universal. It's inevitable that it exists. Another criticism, evaluation of Murdoch is that you can say, you know, is the family the only thing that can perform these functions? So, for example, the reproductive function, you do not need to have a family or even a partner to have a child these days. You can produce children using IVF, and you don't need to have a partner. do you need the family to perform an educational function? Can that not be done by the state or by education or whatever else? Another sociologist is called Talcott Parsons, and he basically came up with the idea that the family has a functional fit with society. So he basically said that the type of family that exists in any given society is determined by the needs of that society. The most common family form in the time that he was writing was the nuclear family, and that is because it fitted. The most common family form in the past was the extended family, and that is because it fitted. Why does the nuclear family fit in industrial society? It's because it's geographically mobile. So the nuclear family is generally smaller than the extended family, and therefore it's easier to move around and to move from place to place to get a job and things like that. Also, the nuclear family is better because it means you are split up from people older than you. For example, your father, if you are the head of a nuclear family, and therefore it means that the family can be more meritocratic. So if you got a better job than your father in the past, that would have been a slight on him, and he may not have been happy about that. It may cause conflict in the family. But in the nuclear family, that's not the case. So it means we have a more socially mobile workforce, so people can move up the system and benefit from that. Yeah, so Parsons feels that the family has a functional fit with society. Remember, he's talking about industrial society, so he's not talking about now, he's talking about in the past to a certain extent. So we live in a post-industrial or a post-modern society, and you could say, what type of family fits now? Does any family fit? Is the different families depending on, where you live in the world or what type of culture you come from and things like that. Talcott Parsons also talked about structural differentiation. That essentially means the family's lost its functions. Think what type of function may the family have had 300 years ago compared to what it has now, for example. Well, the family was everything 300 years ago. It provided medical care. It produced things for the family to eat and wear and things like that. It provided charitable functions for its members, but now it does not do that. The family has less functions, but those functions are really, really important and necessary for a function list. So, according to Parsons, the family now has only two functions. Those are primary socialization, which just means teaching you the norms and values of society, and stabilization of adult personalities. So it essentially provides like a counseling service for adults. For each point, you can always evaluate it if you wish. So, a lot of people think the family is a stressful institution and it leads to, between spouses, conflict and things like that. That is not stabilizing adult personalities. So perhaps Parsons is a little bit naive. The Marxist theory of the family, another theory. So in terms of Marxism, it's a conflict theory. Certain elements of the theory and certain concepts associated with the theory on the screen. So, for example, they believe that the forces of production control what they call the superstructure. The superstructure is anything that upholds ideas and produces ideas in society. One of these things is the family. So the forces and relations of production in our society, we have a capitalist mode of production. So capitalism causes the family to take on a particular role and to be shaped in a particular way. They believe in the fact that we have two classes in our society, the bourgeoisie, who are the ruling class, they own the means of production, and the proletariat, they're the ones who work for the bourgeoisie. Ideology is created in society, which creates a false consciousness. So we have this ideology, which is a set of false beliefs that makes us believe particular things that are wrong and therefore prevents a revolution. The family is one of the things that does this. And they think there's going to eventually be a revolution and that will lead to communism. But the family is one of the things that's stopping that from happening at present. So the family suits the needs of capitalism. Everything in Marxism is about suiting the needs of capitalism. So the role of religion is about suiting the needs of capitalism. The role of the media is about suiting the needs of capitalism, etc. So again, just to recap, you can use these four functions for whatever theory you're talking about. It's just a different spin on those four functions. So reproduction, the family creates more members of the labour force. That's one of the roles of the family. It also has an economic function. So the family used to be a unit of production, but now it's mainly a unit of consumption. So rather than making stuff, we mostly buy things, and that is how we make profit for the bourgeoisie. And the family is one of the main institutions which allows the generation of profit for the bourgeoisie. How? Well, first of all, we want to keep up with the Joneses, we want the best car, we want the best house, we want the nicest curtains, whatever. Children use pester power as a result of media targeting. So advertising is targeted at children. They say, "Mummy, Daddy, will you buy me that?" And children who lack consumer goods are often stigmatized. But if you think of the family, we know that the family is the site at which most purchases are made, from washing up liquid to cereal to whatever else is mainly targeted at the family. Socialization. So it socializes children to accept ideology. So, for example, one of the ideologies that we're told to accept by the family is the idea of hierarchy. So there'll be someone at the top, there'll be someone at the bottom, and that prepares us for work. So the one at the top is usually the man, the oldest man in the family. And, maybe you could say that this theory is a little bit old-fashioned nowadays, and that's one of the ways in which you can evaluate it. Zaretsky also says the family seems like a haven. So one of the things that we're taught is that the family is a really nice place, home sweet home, home is where the heart is and all that sort of stuff. But really, the only thing that happens is that the family exploits us because it seems to be a haven. It seems to provide us with some escape, but in fact it just reinforces capitalism by doing that. Engels, he talked about sexual regulation. So one of the reasons that Marxists think that the family developed was as a way of maintaining and passing on private property. So that was the main justification for the family existing, particularly the nuclear family, particularly with monogamous relationships. So whose sexuality does it control? Well, it controls the sexuality of women, because, if you want to pass on your property to your heir, you need to ensure that your wife is only having sex with one person, and therefore that your child is actually your child. Engels called that the historic defeat of the female sex. Marxists are quite cynical about these institutions and think that in the past, people didn't necessarily belong to nuclear families, and it was only the advent of private property that necessitated the creation of the nuclear family and monogamy. Feminism. So feminist theory, again, it's a conflict approach. Everything is about patriarchy as opposed to capitalism, the male-dominated society that we live in. The family is a negative thing for a lot of feminists. It's the prime site of female oppression. It's the site of domestic labor and domestic violence. And nowadays, feminism is as needed as ever, because it seems that we think that women are equal, but they're actually not. So that belief that they're actually equal prevents them from becoming equal, if you like. Again, it's the same. So in terms of the functions of the family, sexual regulation, the monogamous nuclear family controls women's sexual behavior. Reproduction. So women are the ones who bear children, and therefore they're the ones who have to be controlled in terms of their reproductive capacity. They might have to stay at home to look after the child after it was born, because of the lack of support from the state and things like that. Women provide free domestic labour. That's one of the economic functions of the family. And socialization, the family passes on the norms and values of patriarchy to ensure it is reproduced. So we learn patriarchal norms within the family for a feminist. In terms of all of these theories, you can evaluate them, and I think the key is that anything can be evaluated, and one of the easiest ways to evaluate most theories of the functions of the family is that they're a little bit old-fashioned, some of them. So do we live in a patriarchal society anymore? Do men not do more of the housework? Do women not go out of the home more to work? There's been changes such as it says on the screen, the feminization of the economy, which means women are able to get better jobs, perhaps have a better position in the family. Postmodernists say women have a choice and they can form whatever type of relationship that they want, or even not marry a man and marry another woman. Therefore, are they controlled by patriarchy? I just put that there are other theories too. So a good theory to consider in opposition to these theories on this presentation is postmodern theory, which basically says that we have a lot of diversity and difference and choice in family relationships, and therefore it's not necessarily the case that the family has a certain function or a certain set of functions. Everyone's family can be different and have a different function for them. And there are also theories like the New Right and social action theory that can also be covered in relation to this discussion. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.